Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along those lines, can you tell me, either one of you, what skills are necessary for the big data workforce? I heard you say something about an analytical something, and also as you're speaking, I'd like to hear from you, what role can community colleges play in preparing the next generation workforce for big data?
Okay. Well, if I can, thank you very much for your question. I'd like to try my hand at that. So what's sort of interesting and novel about what we've done around the education, we really started from scratch in building an entire new graduate degree program, and we really wanted to address this question of what skills were needed, and we focused ourselves really looking at the employer as the customer in a sense, the person, the individuals who essentially buy our product and the students, and really tried to understand the skills that they need. And really where that brings you is that there's these technical skills which are important in programming, in math and statistics, but employers really want much more than that. They want individuals who can work well in teams, who can communicate these insights to decision makers, who can actually use the tools and apply the knowledge in an organizational context. And so we've structured the whole education to build a very balanced set of skills, as opposed to what I think is really the conventional approach in graduate education, and to some extent undergraduate education, to focus on the technical skills almost exclusively. And so really what we need to do is sort of approach the whole student. Now, I think community colleges can play a very important role because you can really begin to channel pipelines where students can go and get the prerequisite knowledge that they need, the early levels of math and statistics before they go on to graduate education. Thank you.
I'd just like to comment that a lot of the focus in the past has been on the graduate level of education, as Dr. Rappa just talked about. And while we continue to have a strong need for PhDs in computer science and electrical engineering and mathematics, the biggest skill gap that we see is at the master's level, quite frankly, of people who may not have the mathematical skills to create an entire new type of analysis of data, but who have more than basic IT skills, who actually can understand the implications of using different analytical techniques. Given a problem, given a data set with certain statistical properties, what would be the appropriate analytical technique to use? And when you apply that technique, how could you be sure that the results would be reliable and proper? And so a lot of our focus has been on creating an intermediate level of skill that has the basic understanding of how to use these tools, even if it would fall on someone with more of a PhD level of training to create new analytical approaches.
Representative Wilson, I want to echo something that's been said. I think if we think about big data, let's just step back. There are three related problems that goes beyond big data. It includes all of our IT workforce, computer science, computational science, and so on. These problems have to do with underproduction, which everybody recognizes, underrepresentation, and then pipeline issue. Chairman Bouchon already alluded to this, that we need to worry about our high schools. We need to worry about pipeline. I have 3 kids, and I know where we lose our kids. It's not in master's or PhD. We'll lose the interest of our kids in high schools and middle schools, so that has to be fixed. And there are a number of programs that we've initiated, pilot programs that try to address that issue. Let me share with you one anecdotal sort of evidence, the data on this. Annualized Bureau of Labor Statistic data that predicts that each year we need about 140,000 job openings. We will have 140,000 job openings in computing and, broadly speaking, IT-related jobs. But we're only producing about 100,000, including master's, PhD, undergraduate, and community colleges. In fact, many of these jobs would be available to individuals who have 2-year or 4-year degrees. Another data point that I want to share with you is that 62% of all newly created STEM job openings between 2010 and 2020 will be in computing and IT. Let's not forget that. And that includes data, that includes computational skills, and many of the other skills that the other witnesses alluded to. Thank you.
Just in my 16, 10, 9, 8. What would you suggest that we begin to, how do we begin to get children interested in these sort of skills. Now, I know every little child has an iPad. They can work these computers better than adults. And what do you think we can do to stimulate that all the way from K-12 and into the community colleges, so we'll have more IT graduates? Do you suggest we buy each one, we outfit classrooms with iPads, or what do you think?
You know, I think there's an intrinsic
anyone.
There's an intrinsic curiosity in younger folks about a lot of the tools they use to communicate with each other that have a tremendously greater scalability than the tools that I use to communicate with my friends.
Right.
So the essence of what is a large community's opinion on a topic of interest could involve the opinions of thousands or millions of people. And so I think a lot of the young folks I talk to when I visit K through 12 programs or in programs like eWeek, they have an intrinsic sense not only of the device and the technology, but they have a sense of the reach of that device and technology, which is the beginning of an appreciation of really what we're talking about with big data, that there are trends that they can reach with that device. And I think that fires their imagination in a very powerful way.
This question is for everyone. We've all had several discussions lately about the value of NSF-funded research to society and how we might certify that value based on the grant proposal. I think we might use big data instructively here. It's an incredibly interdisciplinary field where tools developed in the pursuit of one narrow research question, let's say in the social sciences, might have profound applications across many fields of science and in even many sectors of the economy that can't possibly be anticipated at the time of the proposal. What is the potential for data analytics being developed in one little seemingly irrelevant corner, having unintended benefits to other fields and societal applications? And if you have concrete examples, that would be even better for us to understand. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'll start. There's no question there are all sorts of explorations that we're doing in the area of big data that we can't even begin to see the potential impact of it. I'll give you an example. NSF has been investing, and other agencies with the private sector in what's known in the area of machine learning. These investments have taken place for at least 20 or 30 years. In fact, IBM has also led efforts in this area. I can tell you that it's investment of last 20 or 30 years that has come to fruition, such that these machine learning algorithms that essentially allow us to look at these large data sets and identify trends and be able to adapt essentially that have broad range of applications, from weather forecasting to financial modeling to biomedical research and so on, have had tremendous impact. And now we use these techniques as if they're off-the-shelf, essentially, solutions available that you can buy. These are through years of investment that we've made that have come to fruition. So that's an example of that. We're investing in all sorts of areas, in natural language understanding, in information retrieval, in various algorithms and approaches to automated, scalable approaches to reasoning that could be applied to understanding relationship between gene sequences, structure, and biological functions. These are all essentially kinds of investments that we're making, that some of it we could see how it comes to fruition. Some of it relies on decades of investment that we have already made in computational techniques and data-intensive techniques.
If I could offer you an example from the medical world, one of the critical problems in medicine is the loss of premature infants due to infections. And physicians have struggled for a long time with identifying the onset of an infection at a very early point, because as these infections can grow exponentially, the earlier you can intercept them, the more likely you are to have a life-saving benefit for someone who's very vulnerable, such as a premature infant. We've done work with the Toronto Hospital for Sick Kids, where a physician up there had an idea that all the instrumentation in the NICU that is, you've probably been in a hospital room or an intensive care room, all the instruments around the bed, someone comes in every half an hour and writes down those numbers, but the instruments are producing readings continuously. And this physician had the idea that if we kept all that data and we stored all that data as it came out of the machines in real time, which was a tremendous aggregation from a velocity of data point of view, and correlated with the eventual issues that these premature infants had, we might be able to detect patterns using techniques such as machine learning that we were just hearing about, that would give us an early identification of an upcoming infection, the ability to treat it before it got out of control. And her theories were absolutely correct. There were signatures in the data that gave up to 24 hours advance notice of an onset of an infection that was time for the doctors to, in many cases, provide some kind of life-saving therapy. So there's an example of very, very deep mathematics, computer science being applied to a problem where the data was being produced every day by these instruments, and it wasn't being captured, it wasn't being looked at, and it wasn't being correlated with results to produce a fantastic outcome.
I would just sum up by saying that really big data is part of a decades-long process that really started with computerization in the 40s and 50s and eventually got interconnected through the internet in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that the world that we're turning into, data is going to be everywhere. It's going to affect exactly what happens here. It's going to affect hospitals, universities, every corner of the economy, literally. And so we need to take approaches to that, to trying to develop understandings around big data, how it's applied, how the tools of analytics are applied across virtually every sector of the economy. And so I would take a very broad view, not looking at it as specifically a realm of computer technology or some other sort of isolated realm, but looking at it as, unfortunately, as the big thing it is.
May I offer another example as I was thinking about it? I'm reminded of the work by Daphne Kohler and her collaborators at Stanford on classifying breast cancer via image analysis. As you know, 40,000 women die from this disease each year. By extending essentially image analysis techniques to hundreds of, I should say thousands and thousands of biopsy images, they were able to identify a subset of cellular features. Out of 6,000 possible features, they were able to essentially identify a few of them that were predictive of survival time among breast cancer patients. What's really here surprising is that the feature that they identified, it wasn't just from the best feature, I should say, that predictor of the survival was not from the cancerous tissue itself, but it was from the surrounding one. And that has led to new kinds of treatments. It has led to new kinds of diagnosis techniques and also a very personalized treatment that could aim to improve survival times among patients. That's a very, very concrete example. Another example is the work that Google had done during H1N1 virus, and I'll be very brief about this. Before they actually discovered a vaccine, we wanted it to track the spread of disease. Google engineers used data that had nothing to do with the virus directly, from billions of essentially web searches from around the world, together from publicly available flu, essentially historic data on flu trends, to predict the spread of flu virus down to small regions in the country. That was across the world, rather. This is a remarkable, essentially, application of data that one would have never thought could be applicable to something like H1N1 virus.
Thank you. Thank you very much.